So, the bond yields have inverted. Here comes the recession. Here comes the largest financial collapse the world's ever seen. Hold on to your hats. It's about to get bumpy. So this week, both US Treasuries and UK bonds became inverted. What does that mean? That means the yield on a 2-year bond is higher than a 10-year bond. In times of normality, that doesn't make any sense. If you're prepared to tie your money up for 10 years rather than 2, then you should receive a higher interest, a higher yield. But when it becomes inverted, that signals huge problems. This indicator has been very accurate over the last 50 years of predicting recessions, been very accurate. Every recession in America over the last 50 years has had the trigger warning of inverted US Treasuries. This is happening now. Yes, yesterday the bond yields did invert themselves the correct way round, i.e. the yield on the 10-year was higher than the 2-year. But the markets have seen this now. This collapse is almost certainly going to happen. A lot of people in the city, New York and London, trying to brush this away now as, you know, this isn't going to happen, but it certainly is. Just look at the data from everywhere in the world. You know, Russian manufacturing slowing down, German manufacturing slowing down, Indian car sales. Look at the slump coming in China. Look at the state of Argentina. Look at the state of the entire Eurozone. Now, there is a huge collapse coming, and the reason this coming recession is not even really going to be a recession, this will be a depression. The reason this is going to happen is because we haven't correctly unwound since the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s. We had the dot-com crash. They reinflated that into the housing bubble of 07, 08. That collapsed, and then they pushed interest rates super low, printed more money than you can imagine, and now we have bubbles everywhere. You know, we still have house prices that are too high, stock market that doesn't really reflect the security of companies within these stock indices. You know, this is just excess liquidity. This is just cheap money moving into the stock market. Government debt. Look how large government debts are. This is all being fueled by cheap money. Look at art. Look at wine. Look at classic supercars. Classic cars, supercars. This is all in a huge bubble at the moment. These bubbles are going to have to pop. I believe they're going to be able to kick this can down the road for maybe 2-3 years, because they're going to dump huge amounts of money into the system, take interest rates even lower, take them more negative than they already are. The real solution to this collapse is going to be just let the banks fail, which they should have done in 07, 08, but they didn't do that. We have these zombie banks. Europe is just basically zombie banks. Look at the stock price of most banks in the EU now, Eurozone, including the UK, is terrible. Our banks are in a huge crisis. They need to there's no such thing as too big to fail. We certainly need to see some banks just default, go bankrupt, clear the market. Certainly countries are going to have to default on their debts. There's no way these debts can ever be repaid. Many large corporations, we have to have a huge reset. Will this happen? Probably not, because politicians, central banks tend to do the wrong thing. They like to kick the can down the road. So rather than seeing banks fail, rather than seeing countries fail, they're going to try and prop these markets up. They're going to try and reinflate these bubbles. It won't work. It'll probably just lead to destruction of every Western currency, maybe bar the Swiss franc. Maybe Germany will go back to the Deutschmark. Maybe have to leave on the Eurozone. Who knows? But it's certainly interesting times now. This is really the calm before the storm. I remember the calm before the storm back in 2007. I was driving home from work, driving through Chiswick, just about to join the Chiswick flyover on the M4. Anybody who lives in West London, about to drive home. I remember hearing about the credit crunch, didn't really know what it meant. It seemed weird, like what the politicians, what the central bank seems to be saying on the radio about just injecting huge amounts of money to basically prop up this housing bubble. It didn't really make any sense, but you need to use this time wisely. Don't even necessarily believe what I say. Certainly don't believe what the central banks say. Certainly don't believe what you read on BBC News website or watch on the 6 o'clock news. Get out there, start researching yourself, because this is going to be a huge defining collapse. In my opinion, it's going to change the West forever. I think they're going to be able to basically support this market for maybe 2 or 3 years. Certainly the recession is coming now. Over the next 6 months, is likely that we'll see most countries creep into recession. Yes, they can probably print some money. Yes, they can stoke some inflation. Maybe they can cook the books a little bit to just keep growth slightly above negative, just to keep a recession off, a technical recession off on paper. But there certainly is a recession. Most European countries at this point are in recession. America's in recession. It's basically just inflation that we're seeing at the moment that is any form of growth. But this is your chance now. Move your money into safe assets. Look at gold, look at silver, look at getting out of fiat money, because this is a huge collapse coming now. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. Is the bond yield inversion signaling a huge coming collapse? Are we going to get away with it? In my opinion, I don't think this is going to happen, but love to know your thoughts and opinions on this one. We'll probably do a few more videos on this, looking at the collapse that's coming in Europe, in America, in most Western countries. This is going to obviously be devastating for Asia as well, countries such as China, countries such as Japan. But long term, I think those Asian countries are going to survive this, going to weather the storm. China is the next superpower. This is only going to accelerate the collapse of the US as a superpower. It's certainly interesting times. Remember where you were in August 2019, because this is the start of the collapse, in my opinion. Jason from Liberty Bunkers signing off, and I'll see you in a future video.